The latest Government Accountability Office audit of the U.S. government shows plenty of room for improvement in financial reporting. One former Comptroller General has new ideas to fix the way the government does financial auditing. David Walker's distinguished visiting professor at the U.S. Naval Academy. He's writing about financial reporting in GovExec. Dave, I love talking to you because you're not afraid to do the same thing you did as CG, which is tell people they might be doing it wrong. What are some of the most important things that the government should do now in regards to financial and performance auditing?
Well, first, Francis, I think it's important to recognize that accounting is how you keep score, and how you keep score matters. In addition, independent auditing is a critically important element to ensure consistency and reliability. So with that, with regard to financial reporting, there's a number of things that need to change for the federal government. First, believe it or not, the several trillion dollars that are owed to Social Security and Medicare in U.S. government debt, guaranteed by the Constitution of the United States, is not shown as a liability in the financial statements. That's got to change. Secondly, we have huge sums that are off the balance sheet in the sum of tens of trillions of dollars, unfunded Social Security and Medicare obligations, if you will, that we need to recognize that the federal government is different. We should have assets, liabilities, and unfunded obligations and show different subtotals, if you will. And then when we look forward in trying to project fiscal sustainability and intergenerational equity, we need to recognize that debt to GDP is too high right now, and it's increasing. So when we show that information, we need to come up with a reasonable level of debt to GDP that we're trying to achieve over time and show what the implications are with regard to taxes, spending, and different generations. Those are just three of many things that I think would help significantly.
You very conveniently, and I appreciate this, divided your list into your top 10 list into fives. The first five are financial and performance reporting, and the second are financial audits. There's a couple in particular there I want to ask you about. Number 6 is financial statement audits below the department-wide level shouldn't be required, including in the Defense Department. That's one of the ones that I imagine, especially congressionally, will make people get up in an uproar, Dave.
Well, first, let's take the Defense Department as an example. The Defense Department is trying to audit 24 different entities within the Defense Department in order to be able to get to a consolidated audit on the Defense Department as a whole. By definition, all 24 of those are not material to the department as a whole. Every major department and agency has been able to achieve an unmodified opinion on its financial statements except for the Defense Department. And so what I say is that after every major department and agency has achieved an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, and DOD is going to be the last, then we ought to recognize what's really meaningful to the public. What's meaningful to the public is the consolidated financial statements of the U.S. government, and then those departments and agencies that either issue debt or are supposed to be self-sustaining on their own. For example, like the Postal Service. Anything other than that would still be subject to audit, but you wouldn't express a separate opinion on their financial statements because it's not necessary, and frankly, it's just costs that you don't need to incur.
Number 7 is GAO should assume responsibility for auditing the Defense Department. Other than creating a lot more work for our mutual friend Asif Khan, what would that accomplish versus having the Inspector General at DOD continue to oversee the audit?
Well, first, I think it's important to understand that the Inspector General should still be involved. There's no question about that, and their assistance will be important. In addition, it's going to take a number of independent audit firms to be involved as well, because let's face it, the Defense Department is the largest single entity in the United States as a subcomponent of the U.S. government. But the GAO is responsible for the consolidated financial statements of the U.S. government. And the single biggest obstacle to being able to express an opinion on those financial statements is the Department of Defense. And therefore, in my view, they should assume responsibility with the assistance of the Inspector General, with the assistance of independent auditors, because they're the ones that ultimately will decide whether or not it's acceptable and whether or not it's enough for them to be express an opinion on the consolidated financial statements of the U.S. government.
There's a lot more in this piece. I recommend it to folks. To wrap up, Dave, in your vision, does GAO continue to do the DOD audit forever, or is this a period where it gets to a certain place and they hand it back to the IG? What does that look like?
Well, again, over time, I think you don't necessarily need an audit opinion on the DoD standing alone. You need an audit opinion on the consolidated financial statements of the U.S. governments and those departments and agencies that are supposed to be self-sustaining, if you will. Now, at that point in time, you can turn it back over to the IG, that they will be doing work along with independent auditors that will be necessary for the GAO to express consolidated opinion. One last thing, Francis. Performance reporting is important too. We need to have key national indicators, and those need to be integrated with resources to see what kind of results are we getting with the resources that are being given and the authorities that are being given. That's an important element as well.
David Walker, thanks very much for joining me. Great to have you back on the program.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Francis.